There weren't many scraps left in it. She asked, so you throw away any scraps? He replied, sometimes we eat them, but there's too much for us to eat everything. Is it enough to fill this strainer? She asked. Sometimes, he said, but we throw them out before it gets full. Maomao raised an eyebrow and looked at the burned-out trash bin. It seems to me that your trash box is quite a distance away. Did you move it? The man paused. Yes, we have another receptacle here. What about it? He went over to a large jar near the strainer and looked inside. Hey, who emptied this? Maomao looked back at the workers. They had started mumbling again. Do you think you can help me, young lady? The quack pleaded, looking at her with a hangdog expression. Maomao braced herself. She was afraid that the freak strategist would jump in again, but he did not do anything. She looked over, surprised to find him watching the soap makers. He would creep very close to them occasionally, looking intently at what they did. They usually rebuffed him with a contemptuous look. His aide scurried back and forth, apologizing for him. It couldn't have been easy to be him. Why was he looking so close? He cannot tell one face from another. The strategist did not notice people's faces, and this was one reason he treated everyone, except his own family, with such indifference. It made Maomao wonder why he was staring at these people, but she could not bring herself to ask him. The question is, what do I do? She had most of what she needed to prove the quack's innocence. However, her explanation would be stronger if she got one thing ready in advance. Miss Chu, Miss Maomao, what do you need? Maomao whispered to Chu. Chu's small eyes grew wide. Then she said Roger, and she set off running. It would be a while before she returned. Maomao would have to watch the men's moods and judge her moment. Excuse me, she said. I think I can explain how the fire started. If you would come over here, she said to the chattering craftsmen. Yeah, can't wait to hear it. Hope you've got a good story. I believe I do. The fire wasn't set, it started naturally. Therefore this man is innocent. Maomao patted the quack on the shoulder. Why, young lady? The quack looked at her, quaking violently. Is something the matter, master physician? She asked. They'll never just take your word for it. Look how they're glaring at us. The men were indeed fixing the visitors with scary looks. Yes, thank you. I understand. Do you suppose you all would take my word that the fire started naturally? Damn right we wouldn't. How did this fire start? And don't tell us something untrue just because you don't want to pay. It's no such thing, I promise you. All those cast-off fried scraps are the source of your fire. Maomao plucked some of the leftover scraps out of the strainer. You have a lot of fried bits and pieces in one place. They retain heat inside them and can potentially catch fire. As with oil-soaked rags, for example, that are with them. Catch fire on their own. I have never heard anything so stupid. It can happen. Look, Chu came trotting back with a large pot almost overflowing with fried scraps in her arms. Miss Maomao, I got it. Thank you very much, Miss Chu. Maomao had sent Chu to collect fried scraps as quickly as she could. Do you think we can expense this? They did not have enough readily available, so I had to ask them to make more for me. It was not inexpensive, I can assure you. Please ask the good aide there, Maomao said. She was not about to pay for this herself. Instead, she left it all to the strategist's man, who was providing his master with occasional snacks to keep him from becoming too difficult. The strategist was eating a fried treat and continued to stare intently at the soap makers. It was unusual for a man who normally took little interest in other people. All right, look at the pile of scraps. What do you think will happen if I leave it right here? The soap maker shook his head. You are trying to say it will catch fire. The joke is on you. It will just cool down. Are you sure about that? Maomao leered at him, then put the scraps in the jar that served as a trash receptacle. A moment passed. See, nothing is happening. Just wait. Maomao glanced at Chu, who had taken out some artificial flowers and was playing around with them. Hey, young lady. Are you sure about this? Lihaku did not seem entirely convinced. He was keeping his distance from the trash container, as was fitting for a man who had survived having his hair singed by an exploding box. Wait a little longer, Maomao said. Screw waiting. This is a waste of time. I am going back to work, one of the craftsmen said. He turned to leave, and that was when they noticed it. Warm air came with a distinct burning odor. Smoke was coming from the jar. Is this for real? One of the craftsmen asked, hurrying over to look. Wait, is it safe to get close to that thing? Asked another. It won't explode. At least I don't think, Maomao said as she walked over to the jar herself. She could not see any flames yet, but she expected some soon. There you have it, spontaneous combustion of the fried scraps. You see now that this could very easily be the cause of your fire. Now, just a minute. If it is so easy for a fire to start, why has not there been one before? We have been doing this work here for decades, and this is only the second fire we have had. Have you always thrown away large quantities of hot scraps? No, not always. Just recently we started doing it. Maomao remembered the man saying that they were in competition with other soap makers to get the supplies. That might encourage someone to collect hot oil, even though it was dangerous. They could simply throw away the hot scraps that came with it. Maomao looked at the large jar and thought, collecting the oil while it was still hot was a risky business. She said, I gather you still don't believe me, but you can't doubt what you see. The fire started naturally. The soap maker was silent. He seemed incredulous, as Maomao had said. To be fair, she hadn't believed it at first either when she heard about it. She had done an experiment. Today she had stacked the deck in her favor in two particular ways. Normally it would have taken longer for the scraps to catch fire. She knew this because she had tried it herself before. She really had to wait that day. She hadn't been using fried food scraps, but old rags soaked in highly flammable incense oil. Nothing at all happened with just a few of them. She piled more on until they started to trap the heat. Still there had been no fire. She waited so long that she drifted off to sleep. Only then did they ignite. She woke up when someone doused her with water, thankfully before she was burned. She really wanted to see the fire actually start. She hoped to try again so she could confirm it with her own eyes. But she was angrily informed that there were to be no more experiments in this field. In this case, the craftsmen didn't seem likely to put up with much waiting, so she had Chu pull a little trick. Along with the copious amount of scraps, she asked her to procure a cinder. Chu, skilled in sleight of hand, had easily passed it to Maomao. Maomao then surreptitiously included it when she dumped the scraps in the jar. She was glad it caught. She wasn't proud of this modest con, but she hadn't had much choice. As for the second advantage she'd given herself, she was fairly confident that the cause of the first fire had been what she'd described. But the second fire was harder to explain. It wasn't impossible, but it wasn't very likely either. The trash container that caught fire held palm leaves and fried scraps. However, there weren't enough of them to spontaneously combust. Maomao's experiment used rags, not fried scraps, so it wasn't exactly the same. However, she realized they needed a hotter environment to catch fire. She wondered why they would use a wooden chest to throw those things away. Liuhumen would certainly have warned her against saying things she couldn't prove. While Maomao was still thinking about it, the freak strategist abruptly stopped studying the craftsmen and leaped into action. Perhaps he had eaten all of his fried snacks. Tell me something, the strategist demanded. Why are you trying so hard to blame someone else? Excuse me, one of the men said, looking confused. The strategist did not always make much sense, but this was unusual. Master Lacan says that someone here is lying, the aide explained helpfully. And that person is the real culprit. Who? Who would do such a thing? Asked the quack, looking at Lacan with pleading eyes. That black ghost stone right on the edge of the group there. Ghost stones are how Master Lacan sees people whose faces he can't distinguish. It wasn't easy being the strategist's aide. He had probably worked harder than any of them today, and Maomao didn't even know his name. Oh yeah, you think I am lying? Do you have any proof of that? Demanded the man Lacan had identified as a black ghost stone. You are blinking. Your heart is pounding, I can practically hear it. And you stink of sweat. Pardon me, I am not sure what to say about that one. Even the aide was at a loss. People blink more when they are lying and their heart rate increases. Sometimes they start to sweat. A popular rumor around the Lee court held that you could not tell a lie in the presence of the strategist. Just when it seemed he was making wild pronouncements based on nothing more than pure instinct, Maomao discovered that there was some method to his madness. I remember Pops saying that the freak strategist might not be able to tell people's faces apart, but he could discern the parts of faces. He could see eyes or noses, but they did not quite form a human face for him. Instead, he had other ways of telling strangers apart. He noticed their voices, their movements, and their characteristic smells. He might be the most perceptive observer you could find. It just did not do anyone much good, because he usually did not care about other people. No, that wasn't entirely true. It was perfectly helpful in his work. This worthless old man was a better judge of talent than anyone. Hey, you can't talk about me like that. No, I can smell it. Smoke, tobacco, the soap fragrances, the honey and the aromatic leaves almost cover it, but you were smoking until a few minutes ago, weren't you? The monocled old man said. The other soap makers all looked at the new suspect. Someone said, hey, you said you quit. Another one exclaimed, we told you not to smoke around the oil. Don't tell me you did it out here. The others closed in on the accused man, and soon tobacco leaves were discovered in his robes. A tobacco fire, that certainly explained how this blaze had started. Looking for a chance to take a puff, the man had said he was going to take out the trash as an excuse to have a smoke, somewhere the others wouldn't see him. There had been leaves and scraps in that trash. The fibrous leaves were easily flammable. The scraps might as well have been oil. When tobacco ashes were thrown on top of them, the fire would not start immediately. First it would begin to smoke, and only then would it burst into flame. This happened just as the quack doctor was passing by. The unusual strategist had likely been able to determine that the smoker was lying. The man had suspected on some level that his tobacco had started the blaze. The other workers seemed to accept the man's tobacco leaves as proof. They surrounded him and were giving him a piece of their minds. Ahem, thank you very much. You saved me, the quack doctor said, straightening the front of his rumpled outfit. It is wonderful, isn't it? Perhaps you could thank Miss Chu by buying her a coral hair stick, Chu said. She never missed an opportunity. Maomao went over to the shouting men. Excuse me, she said. She was glad she had been able to establish the quack's innocence, but there was one more thing she needed to do. I'd like some soap, please. This errand was turning into quite an ordeal, and she just wanted to get it over with. Chapter 20, smack up against the wall. It had been a very characterful day. And it was a long one for that matter. It was still just past noon. As Maomao had suggested, the quack doctor had dropped the key in the toilet. She said, that's right. Then I was so depressed about not being able to get into the medical office. And then someone asked me to run an errand. She'd called it all right. The cleaning woman had not even given the quack a chance to explain. In the end, he shuffled sadly away from the ship. He reported that the market was nearby, and he figured he would be back soon. Maomao gave the quack the extra key, then returned to the palace. She was not interested in looking after the unusual strategist. She hoped to pass him on to someone else as soon as possible. Fortunately, she did not need to worry about it for long. After a pleasant walk and a good meal, all that remained was a nap. He was very drowsy, much like a 3-year-old, and his life felt similar. When he was told to go to his room and sleep, he went obediently. It was hard not to feel sorry for the freak's aide, though. Maomao hoped he would be able to take a break as well. She went back to her room. Lihaku said, I will be in the next room, and stationed himself in the adjoining chamber. It was nice to know that if anything out of the ordinary happened, he would come running. Well, it looks like nothing is going on. I think I will get a little sleep too. Maomao lay on her bed, fully intending not to get up again for the foreseeable future. But suddenly, she found herself in the grip of a surge of anger. It was the quack doctor's own fault that he had gotten into trouble, because of the way he wandered from one thing to another. At a very deep level, he lacked any sense of danger. He had no business being on this trip. Why did they even bring him? Yes, that was the question. The quack was too laid back to have even a twinge of doubt about it. However, he was there as Liu Men's body double. If he was unlucky, he could find himself kidnapped or worse. She knew they had done this for Liu Men, or had they? Who had they really done it for? If anything happened to her old man, who would be the most heartbroken? The freak strategist? Or maybe even Maomao buried her face in the sheets and kicked the bed. Someone said, I'm glad to see you're keeping busy. It was Chu. She had witnessed the petulant display, much to Maomao's chagrin. How long had she been there? I'm sorry, Maomao said. I seem to have kicked up some dust. She sat up and straightened the bedsheets as if nothing had happened. No worries. We are going to go see the Moon Prince now, okay? The Moon Prince, but it is barely noon. Typically Maomao changed Jinchi's dressings after he had washed for the day. Putting on fresh salve only for him to take a bath would defeat the purpose. Do not worry, you will see when we get there. I have brought boiled water. Wipe yourself down. Chu trotted in with her squeaky footsteps and laid out some fresh clothes for Maomao. It seemed to be a not-so-subtle message that she needed to change after hiking around outside and getting all sweaty. Chu acted exactly like a lady-in-waiting. However, watching her practically dance as she got ready was interesting. Her tail shook as she moved, and she seemed to be having fun. It also looked very tiring. No wonder she eats so much. All the dancing, the sleight of hand, and all her other little movements must use a lot of energy. Having been informed, Maomao took the new clothes. They were not completely new, though. They were the same as the ones she had received yesterday. Chu likely had several more sets available. Maomao cleaned herself and changed her clothes. "Excuse us," Maomao said as she entered Jinchi's room. This was a chamber suitable for a guest of state, complete with all its ornate decorations. It was several times larger than Maomao's room and divided into several chambers. She could even see a balcony outside. "Please come in," said Suhyun, who was there to greet them. She led Maomao to an inner room with a gentle smile. Past a curtain, Jinchi was lounging on a couch. Gaeshan was at one hand and Taomei at the other. She did not see Chu's husband, Baryu, but she suspected he might be in the next room. Oh ho, Gaeshan and wife. Maomao might have felt better with Taomei showing her around rather than Suhyun. But maybe the old lady was being considerate, trying not to take any more family time away from Gaeshan. He and his wife were both busy people. It didn't seem like they had much time to spend together. As Maomao might have expected from Gaeshan's description of his wife, Taomei was the older of the two, and she acted accordingly. With the banquet and everything else, Maomao hadn't visited Jinchi's rooms the night before. Now she saw that a member of the imperial family truly was treated differently. There was a beautiful arrangement of fresh fruit on the table. Maomao had not seen such a thing in her own room. It included some fruit that wasn't even in season yet, like lychees, mangoes, and even bananas. She wondered how they had grown those. She was most interested in the fruit. Many of them she knew only in dried form or from pictures. She thought she could feel a spark in Chu's eyes right over her shoulder. It was almost enough to make her reach out and take one of the pieces of fruit, but she knew she couldn't. Having the old lady glaring at her was bad enough. Even Taomei had her one good eye fixed on Maomao. Gaeshan was watching with his usual pleading face. He looked as if he was saying, "Please don't do anything." Maomao collected herself and looked at Jinchi. "Did you need something, sir?" She sounded a bit stiff because her anger from earlier had not completely gone away yet. "Need something?" he asked. "Not particularly. Right now I mainly need you to wait," Maomao Sugan said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We will have a visitor soon, if you would step back for the time being." "Yes, ma'am," Maomao said after a moment. Why had they called her here if they simply wanted her to wait? Shortly thereafter, a large man entered the room with a woman. He seemed to be supporting her weight. Is that Maomao thought she recognized the woman. The woman possessed a restrained and ephemeral beauty. Princess Fayu. "Allow me to congratulate you on your pregnancy. I can only apologize that I wasn't able to greet you sooner," said Jinchi, conclusively identifying the woman. Fayu, the woman who had caused the stir about the spirit in the rear palace. The woman whose somnambulance had made her dance upon the palace walls. The man with her must be the soldier to whom she had been given then. Moon Prince. "I never forget the kindness you have shown me. Thanks to you I was able to return to my home country." Fayu sat down slowly. Her clothing was billowy but her body still looked heavy. She was likely quite large under her clothing. Her husband said nothing, probably because at this moment his wife was more important than he was. "Without your help, Moon Prince, I doubt I would be here today," Fayu said. "Could it be?" Maomao thought about it. Could the people in the other carriage when she arrived in Arnon have been Fayu and her husband? Leihaku had said Li did not want to let go of one of its best soldiers. However, Fayu had evidently been sent back home because she was pregnant. Jinchi had clearly helped her. So what would happen to her husband in this situation? Would he stay in Li or return to Arnon? Maomao did not know, but being able to have one's child in one's own homeland was very important. "I think I understand now. Jinchi wanted Maomao to see both of them. There was just one thing: I did not really do anything in that situation. Jinchi told Maomao to cure Fayu's sleepwalking, but Maomao suspected it was only an act. Seeing the princess now, she was virtually certain. However, she had never informed Jinchi of those doubts. Did he figure it out himself? She had told Empress Gyukayo the truth quietly, but she doubted the Empress had let anything slip. If Jinchi had realized that Maomao had been covering for Fayu, that made her somewhat uncomfortable. At the same time, she was glad to know that Fayu was happy. Fayu and her husband spoke to Jinchi about something, and they were civil and courteous the whole time. Then they left. They seemed like a good couple. Maomao could tell even in those few minutes. The soldier fawned over Fayu so much that it was almost embarrassing.